Hello and welcome to episode 268 of the Board Game Barrage podcast. My name is Mark, I am the Green Tank, and I am joined by Kellen the Red Tank.
Yo.
Neil in the Orange Tank.
Hello.
And the one and only Christina the Blue Tank.
Hello.
On today's episode, we're going to do things a little bit differently today. Instead of going through games we played and going over a topic, we're going to do a little bit of a travelogue where we are going to be recounting our Tales of Dice Tower West, which just wrapped up this weekend and which brought all the tanks together. So we've had adventures, we played a lot of games, we played a bunch of games, as we might say, as Neelan might say, and as Christina might laugh at. And so we are going to be recounting those tales. We had the non-Vegas tanks coming in on Wednesday and Thursday.
The non-Vegas tanks?
Yeah, that's everybody but me.
I see, okay.
Yeah, that's how I like to refer to you.
Yeah, interesting.
So that happened Wednesday and Thursday. Then Friday we had the big BGB patron game night, so we'll be telling you all about that. And then Saturday was a day chock full of interesting things happening. We had shouting in the main hall of Dice Tower West. We had bloodshed. We played one of the hottest new prototypes. And then we'll maybe tell you the tales of One Pull Kellen and the most amazing buffet experience that man has ever known. And then on Sunday, we wrapped things up with two of the biggest games we played, some of the most interesting games we played. And so we'll go over all of that right now. How are you guys feeling after the big convention? Full of energy? Full of
Hyped, energized.
There you go.
That's the energy we need because in reality, we're all really sleepy. We stayed up really late every night, obviously. And as you probably know, daylight savings time happened yesterday, and that just made us all extra sleepy today. So
we want our 1 hour of money back, Tom Fassel.
yeah, we were trying to figure out if Dice Tower West always happens on daylight savings time weekend. And if so, yeah, we're getting robbed an hour every year.
I don't think it does. And actually, I saw on some message board or something people complaining about the fact that it was on a daylight savings time. So anyhow, so let's start things up. So Neelan arrived on Wednesday. And I don't remember if it was Wednesday or Thursday. I think it was Thursday when we first went to the convention before Christina and Kellen got into town.
No,
and
I think it would have been Wednesday.
Okay, was it Wednesday?
Afternoon for sure.
Okay. So we went into the con early. This was Wednesday night. And we got a chance to walk around the hall, get a lay of the land. But also, we played a game of Return to Dark Tower. So for those who don't know or who may have this ring a bell, this is a re-implementation of Dark Tower, which was a game from the 80s, and Restoration Games, as is sort of their style, they've taken that older game and given it a modern gaming sort of makeover and done it up with a electronic tower where you're throwing little skulls into. This has been co-designed by such luminaries as Isaac Childress, Rob Davio, Tim Burrell-Stewart, Noah Cohen, and Brian Neff. Are the listed designers. And so, yeah, Neelan and I sat down with listener Gordon, who I knew from back in my LA days, way back when.
Back when you were an LA tank.
Back when I was in an LA tank. Back before I was the only non-LA tank. And I've got to say, like, I remember when this game was coming out. I remember how hot it was. I remember the Kickstarter carrying a massive price tag, but being a massive success, at least financially. And I don't think I was ever super interested in it just because, one, the idea that it's a re-implementation of an older game that I had never played and had no sort of nostalgia for, and the fact that it's a co-op, and my concern that it was relying on the gimmick of this tower. For those who don't know, this is a co-op game where there is a big tower that you link to an app and that will move around and spit out the aforementioned skulls that I mentioned. You put a skull in at the end of every round and it spits out the skull, and depending on where the skull lands, there's like blight on the land and something you have to deal with. And of course, you're fighting a monster, all that kind of stuff. So I was worried it was gimmicky. I had no nostalgia for it. Co-op games generally don't do it for me. But I've got to say, I was very, very pleasantly surprised by Return to Dark Tower. What did you think of it, Neelan?
Yeah, I'd kind of largely written it off, I think, for all the same reasons you just mentioned. It kind of seemed like it was all gimmick, no game. I had no nostalgia or even knowledge of the original 80s game. It's not something that made its way to South Africa in any form. So this was kind of just a completely unknown for me, except I'd heard a lot of good buzz from people I trust in the board game space. So there was a sense of like, maybe I should check this out. And It's actually, it's fairly decent. Look, it's not like an incredibly strategic experience in like the broader sense of like co-op games, but it was a lot of fun. The app integration is really good, so there's this unpredictability to where the monsters are going to come out, and each monster has different characteristics. You can kind of learn over time how they're going to hurt you and how to avoid them and whether they're worth fighting and whether they're not. And you're sort of slowly building up your ability to like take on the main big boss. And there seems like a fair chunk of variability to all of that, like which monsters are even in play, what the boss is, what the quests are. It's cool.
Yeah. I was really pleasantly surprised by the way that the tower was integrated to the app. As I mentioned, the end of your turn is marked by you throwing a skull into this tower, and the tower can spin around and spit the skull out, but it also signals the end of your turn, and so the app knows, okay, this is the end of the turn, and it runs through all the end of turn things. And it's just a really clever way to integrate the app without being too obtrusive. I don't think the app was getting in the way, although it is obviously vital for the game, but I just enjoyed how well it worked together.
Yeah, it was technically impressive. There are a lot of app games, but I can't think of any that have like a two-way connection between the app and a component.
Right.
Nealon, this two-way connection, Nealon brought this up like 7 times throughout the con.
Well,
how
it's
impressive
like
the two-way connection
it's
is
like,
between the app.
It's neat.
Okay, did you know you could buy a banana phone for your smartphone? It's literally a banana that has a two-way connection with your phone, and you can make calls on it as if it were your cell phone. Are you technically impressed by the banana phone?
I am very impressed. I continue to be impressed.
Okay.
That sounds amazing to me.
After that, we played Heat Pedal to the Metal. I know that the rest of the gang played that later in the con, so maybe we'll hold off on that for now. But then we got together for our first game as a group, and of course, we kicked it off with none other than Magic Mountain. This is one of the hottest games, I'm sure, on BGG.
Oh, you're talking about us now?
Yeah, this was the first game we played together.
Oh, well, you got to tell them it's Thursday now.
Sorry.
They still think it's Wednesday.
How did we get there? Turn the calendar.
How did we get to Wednesday? Meanwhile, back in Los Angeles, the red and blue tanks are not happy because we're not there and because we're working so hard to finish our work to come to Vegas.
Making feverish calls on our banana phones.
Your two-way banana phones.
Yeah.
And then everybody went to sleep at Mark's house. Right. And then everybody woke up in the morning, and then everybody probably had some breakfast, and then, well, I don't know what happened next.
This is going to get pretty dull.
No, these are all true. It's like you were there, Christina. We ended up at the con for a little bit, and more than anything, we were just feverishly awaiting the arrival.
Yes.
Of Magic Mountain.
Of the red and blue tanks, but yes, Magic Mountain.
I think Kellen should tell us about Magic Mountain, because he was the best at it.
We've forgotten the part where Nealon ran out to give Christina her badge, but somehow did not have my badge, so that had to go be picked up, but he was ready and eager to help one of the two of us.
Yeah, there was this bizarre situation. I guess we'd have to go into specifics, but
yeah, it only helps you if we don't go into the specifics.
For whatever reason, I was only able to retrieve Christina's badge and not Kellen's. But
when we went up to the counter to get our badges, they were happy to give Kellen his, and then they thought that there was a robbery, and they were just like, "Somebody has stolen your badge."
All right.
Because Nealon already had it.
Because Nealon had done it out of the kindness of his heart. We played a game. It's called Magic Mountain. It is from Amigo, the publisher of small box card games. But no, this game is a game for children about cooperatively rolling balls down the Magic Mountain. There are lanes, and you are picking which lane a colored ball hits. And you're trying to hit the good little witch girls and not the bad, ugly witches. And when you hit one of them, they move to the next colored space downward on the track, which is a good thing for the little girl witches and a bad thing for the big bad witches, because if too many of the big bads get to the end, you lose the game. But this can make a turn really fun because it goes the right way for the first hit, and then you pick up the little girl witch and move her down the track, but suddenly it's veering the wrong way. And so your decisions in this game are not which color ball do I want out of the bag, which I think they're not balls, right? Do we remember what they were? Like essences?
Will-o-wisps.
Will-o-wisps. Colored will-o-wisps. Your only choice was, which track should I put this on? And then everyone will scream at you that you're not doing good enough at the game Magic Mountain. And we started on expert mode, and we lost expert mode.
Did we lose?
We did lose.
I think we did.
Oh,
lose by
barely
right
though.
at
We
the
were
end.
like
Yeah.
one little witch girl away from winning.
Because Callan wasn't focusing.
I know.
Callan was just flying by
I
the seat of his
actually seem
pants,
to
just throwing
recall
will-o-wisps.
a board game Instagram influencer put a box in front of my choices to try to take photographs while I was trying to play the game.
He threw you off, and that's why we lost.
That's right. It was like 3 turns later, but still. Magic Mountain.
Yeah, I liked it. I remember we demoed it at Gen Con, I believe. It's a children's game, but I think that it's a game that you could put in front of adults and have a silly fun time. I don't think it's completely brainless. And I mean, well, maybe it is brainless because you're not making much decisions, but the toy factor, I think, gets a lot of the job done. And then so we wrapped up Thursday by playing a game of Tower of Babel, which Kellen and Neil and Christina talked about on a previous episode, which I hadn't played and was happy to play. Had a really good time with that. The Knizia Hidden Gem.
We did like it less at 5 though, right, Neelan?
Yeah,
Or at least
I think that's
felt that way.
definitely true. The requirements for the resources on the buildings don't change at 5, so everyone at the table is just a little bit more flush with stuff, which makes the negotiation a little bit less spicy than when we played it at 3.
This is the game that Christina checked out from the BGG library. And literally,
don't tell
as
them
it
this
was being
story.
checked out, they're like, oh, this game was covered on the Board Game Barrage podcast. And you didn't mention that you're on the Board Game Barrage
froze up.
podcast.
I froze. I didn't know what to say. I smiled and
You smile and say, take a picture. Or you smile and say, that's me. Or you sign the box in front of them. Or, I don't know, flip them off and walk away. Something.
Well, Mark did go with me to return it because we wanted to see if they would recognize him, and I think they did get a little flustered when they saw Mark. So I think we got him. I'm just kidding. We weren't trying to get anyone.
And then I think the last game, at least for our table, was In the Year of the Dragon, which was the first time that Christina had played it, but is a favorite of Neelan's.
That wasn't
Christina-
your first time, Mark?
No. I played it before, but I know it's Neelan's favorite feld or second favorite feld.
Yeah, I would say it's right
Right up
behind Oracle of Delphi as my top 2 felds, which is not a very popular opinion. I definitely
Right.
put out there. Christina, what do you think of what do you
loved
think
it.
of In the Year of the Dragon?
She loved it.
Well, I felt really bad to say anything negative because Neelan was so excited to show it to us, and he did a wonderful job teaching it. I was miserable the entire time, but not the good kind of miserable. You know what I mean? It's so interesting actually to me because my favorite games, I think, are the ones where I'm like so stressed that I can't even sit. Like I have to stand up because I'm so stressed. But that's because it's like a really good tension. You're just like so amped up about what you've planned and how it's going to work out and what other people are going to do and how it's going to affect you and blah, blah, blah. This was not that. This was like misery with every decision because all the decisions were bad. And I think Neelan has described this before on the podcast as you do this and then you kill your people, and then you do this and then you kill your people, and then there's this other thing and then you kill your people. And it's the game of strategically killing your people. And there were no fun options for me.
I think that you hit on something which is maybe very relevant to point out, which is that we play this at the 5-player count, and the game does not
True.
get any less constrained at different player counts, to my memory at least. So at 5, you're just more people fighting over the same number of spaces, effectively. Yeah. And it's a game that is, even at 4, incredibly harsh. You know, at 4 players, you will always at least have an option to go to without having to pay money. But at 5, the last player will literally just not have that option.
To pay money.
Absolutely.
There's no, yeah.
Which just makes it that much more, especially for a first-time player, like if you get behind, that's going to suck. And that it was probably not the ideal way to have like introduced it to you, for sure.
Well, we can try again.
Yeah, right.
Different player count. We can try again.
Kelly, do you have anything for Thursday?
Yeah, I was exiled out of this group for reasons that were not known to me.
Because he kept saying Babel.
Oh. That the entire reason why I wasn't allowed to play Tower of Babel with you was because of how I pronounced the word.
Yeah, it's okay. I know that it's all right to say it either way, but it just,
Yeah.
I don't want to start saying it that way.
I am very lucky to have been exiled from the Tower of Babel because I got to play a series of fun card games, in the spirit of my PAX Unplugged days, I joined a group and played trick-taking and card games. And I played 4 of them, while you guys were suffering and your people were dying. I played a interesting small box card game from Reiner Knizia called No Mercy, which is a re-implementation of Cheeky Monkeys. This was fine, super light, just sort of push your luck, flipping cards. Liked it more than some and worse than others. Didn't really care for the theme. But then I got to play a game that was actually imported on my behalf, a trick taker, from a user on our Discord, Glomzig. I never know how to pronounce these weird usernames. Glomzig. Pretty good pronunciation. This was Trick Raiders, which is a 4-player trick-taking game where you have health and you're sort of targeting each other and trying to get people to not be able to play tricks. And so they're using cards that are in front of them, cards in their hand, and they are trying to lower each other's HP, which is kind of a really fun concept. I think I'll probably cover this on a future episode once we all get to play it together. I quite liked this, but I played a trick taker. Oh, But no, we had a member of the, I can never remember what their game collective, the PGC, the Portland Game Collective, a mod from there sort of teaching these to us in rapid succession. They just have all the trick takers. They know all the trick takers. We played one called Pups that had really cute dogs on it, but it was not very good. I do not recommend. Do not pass go, which is not something you do in trick takers. But we did play one, Mark, that you played later that I think is in my top 2 or 3 games of the convention. And this is, again, another game I'm definitely going to be able to pronounce. Schoten, a 2014 game of trick-taking. And I believe it puts like Shinzawa's 9 Lives to sort of shame. And the reference there, right, is that in both games you can see all the colors of the cards in other people's hand based on the card back. And the betting system is kind of novel. You're betting on which color you'll be able to get the most cards in and which color you'll be able to get the least cards in. But you can make that bet independent of everyone else. So Neelan and I could both bet that we're going to get the most red cards. And that all happens simultaneously. There is this concept called the spice rack, which the best part about it is it's the spice rack or cabinet. It might even be a spice cabinet. Either way, like if you win a trick, you're getting to pull extra cards from another section of the board. Really excellent, really out of print. One that I'm still thinking about and kind of ruminating on what the retheme would be. And the only reason the retheme is not Pokemon, right, because that's easy, is because I just don't know, like, how many trick-taking Pokemon games can one have? Like, Mark, if someone says, play my trick taker, and it's Pokemon, that's like a downgrade. You don't want that.
Well, I want it because I'm hoping it's good so I can recommend it to you. But in general, for myself, I would say Pokemon Trick Taker, probably not high on my list. Yeah.
So what's a universal theme? What's the most universal theme?
Puppies.
Never been. No. We just.
Yeah, that didn't work.
No, but you could retheme it. Use the cute puppies, but
from the other game? That's really rude to whoever designed
just
that.
Just mash them.
Yeah. So that was great. Loved it. But again, you played one game, I played 4, so who's winning now?
2 games, actually.
Actually. All right, I'm done.
You can go to bed now. Thanks for participating.
I did want to shout out to Daniel, a longtime Sunshine in our Discord or the Game Table on Instagram, for introducing me to Cusco, which is a re-implementation of Java in the Mask trilogy. I'd played Mexica previously, and this has some of the same systems, but kind of changes the area majority into kind of more like a spatial puzzle scoring game. I love this. I thought it was better than Mexica, and I'm excited to play a lot more of it. So yeah, thank you so much to Daniel for running me through that.
So that wrapped up Thursday. Friday was the big BGB game night. We had a fantastic crowd. We had a really big turnout. We were sort of packed to the brim at some points, but again, was remarkable in terms of, for as many people as we had, just an amazing group of folks. Everybody seemed really fun and nice and down to play and down to teach and all that stuff. It was an incredibly nice group of people. So that was really, really fun. I guess the first highlight for me of the game night was playing the Estates, which is one of my favorite games of all time. And this play was no exception. Whenever I play one of my favorite games of all time with listeners, I'm always a little wary because I want to put up a good show and, let them know that I know what I'm doing around here. But got off to a shaky start with Estates. Estates, for those who don't know, is a game that is an auction game that has a closed economy that can be really, really tight and can take really, really big swings in fortune if you spend too much of your money and now you don't have very much and folks can sort of pounce on you. I overspent early and was concerned that I was going to be out of it. Fortune broke my way and thought I had a chance to win. In fact, I think most people at the table thought I had a chance to win, which proved bad for me because they sort of ganged up on me, which allowed Liz, one of our listeners, to get the win. But regardless of my loss, just had a fantastic time. Proved again how great a game it is. We had a couple of first-time players, and they seemed to really enjoy it. So loved having the Estates as the first game out of the box for the BGB game night.
One thing that was pretty fun as well is Christina and I played for the first time Coyote. I don't know how I'd somehow missed playing this. We were all in at this game at some point, but this was the first time Christina and I had played it. This is basically like a version of like Liar's Dice, where you have a card facing away from you and you're trying to continually bid up the score of the total of all of the cards without knowing what's written on your card. And if you go over, the next person call you out and then they get a point. Lots of fun.
Yeah, this was awesome. Like Milan said, this was my first time. I really, really loved it. I tend to be a sucker for these types of games like Liar's Dice, Cockroach Poker. I don't know what it is because I hate lying games when it's like the Resistance, like Hidden Trader games, but I love bluffing games. I love the game of like looking into somebody's eyes and trying to read them and then like trying to figure out what they think you have. I don't know. It's just so much fun.
So rank them all, right?
Rank what?
Liar's Dice, Coyote, Skull, and Cockroach Poker.
Okay, fine. You go first.
Neil can reply to that.
Yeah, I could jump in with my hot take. I would say that of those four, I like Cockroach Poker the least. I think probably Skull, then Coyote, and then Liar's Dice. I just have like a soft spot for Liar's Dice. I used to play a lot of it in high school. I think it's still the best.
I think I would need to play Liar's Dice again because it's been a very long time. But I would put Coyote pretty high on the list. And Cockroach Poker. I love Cockroach Poker.
Yeah, I wanted to be able to say that my list was the exact opposite of Neelan's, but that is not the case. Though I do think Kakerlakan Poker is better than all of them.
Yeah, Skull is last on my list, I meant to say.
Skull is last on my list as well. Mark?
I think I'm Cockroach Poker 1. I think it might be Coyote 2, Liar's Dice 3, but that's close. And then Skull 4. That is close, but I think that's where I land right now.
That's definitive.
That's definitive. We also had a definitive game of Time's Up. We had one last year at the BGB get-together, so we had another one this time around, and it never fails to deliver. Had a blast, highlighted by plays from Christina and from Casey, Brain in the Jar fame, who were both fantastic and led their team to a victory.
I would take some umbrage with that language, but sure.
It is funny with Time's Up because I think every single time I go into a game, I'm really nervous and I'm like, it's probably not going to be fun this time, or it's probably not going to be as fun this time. Like I think that every time I go into a game, and then I'm always wrong. It's always as much fun, if not more fun than the last time. And this proved to be true with the game we played with everyone who was there. It was awesome.
I think there's something always funny about when you play the Time's Up rule set, as it were, with people that are obviously familiar with Celebrity or Fishbowl or whatever their local variant of this is. I think the Time's Up rule set wins out and even wins over people that have previously played like other versions.
We had some of that.
We're like, oh my gosh, you can't pass. It's just great. It's almost like the most refined version of the rule set still, in my mind.
The best inside joke that developed over the 3 rounds of this game was everybody pointing at Kellen for 2 specific cards for 2 titles. And one of the titles is obvious. It was Pokemon. So that makes complete sense. The other one was You're So Vain, which I won't provide any more context.
Yeah, I had some listeners that were apologizing to me, but still using it to score points for their team.
They were like pointing at Kellen like, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Which made it funnier.
And I think the other big game we played, you all played, Neil and I played earlier, was Heat. So we finally got a chance to play the hot game from Days of Wonder. Heat is a racing game by the same designer as Flamme Rouge, but
Flamme
with
Rouge, Neelan.
I don't know how this just became like an in-joke that we were always constantly talking about Flamme Rouge, literally from the second that Christina and Kellen arrived.
Yeah, when we first walked up, Neelan was talking about Flamme Rouge. And then it happened like 3 more times between that night and the next day, where every time I walked up to Neelan, he was talking to somebody else about Flamme Rouge.
It's just fun to say.
I was trying to like plant people to be like, hey, go ask Neelan what he thinks about Flamme Rouge.
That's funny. So what did you think about not Flamme Rouge, but Heat after finally getting a chance to play it?
Who, me or Kellen or Neelan?
Whoever. Well, I'll start. I'll say that I enjoyed it. I played it. Sorry, Neelan got a chance to play it twice. I played it the day before on Thursday and was pleasantly surprised. I generally like racing games, and I think this handled racing games well. I know Kellen had some issues with the game, and I will agree with those. I had the same sort of concerns, but I'll have Kellen describe them when it gets around to him. But what did you guys think, Christina and Neelan?
I loved it. I think Neelan and I are the 2 positives for this one. I just had so much fun playing it the entire time. I loved the tension of every single round. I loved that you were able to just discard as many cards as you wanted at the end of your turn, except for the non-discardable cards. I loved how you were able to set up your next turn. Like, you cycle through the deck so many times that you really get familiar with what you have in your deck. And then you also have to be really strategic about if you're burning heat, and then that clogs up your deck. And so all these little tiny decisions were just really fun to make throughout the whole game. And then there was just so much movement back and forth in terms of first place, second place, third place. Even somebody that ended up in last place kind of early caught up by the end and was in like third place, I think. And so there was just a lot of mobility in that way, which made it really exciting, because it's like you're in first place for a minute and then you are not in first place and you have to figure out how to get back. And there were a lot of really fun thematic parts that I liked. Though, I mean, the whole thing, every rule felt very thematic, which was super fun. And it just also just has like the little kid element where you're playing with little toy cars and you just feel like you're playing with Hot Wheels. Like it was just, I really, really had a great time and loved it.
Yeah, I think you hit on the one thing that I think is the smartest thing about the system, Christina, which is that although it's effectively got that deck builder style structure where you're running through your deck multiple times, the way that it uses heat, which, you know, is there's a reason it's in the title of the game, is the system. Like, you add curses, Dominion style curses that clog up your hand to your deck in order to get momentary boosts, momentary benefits. But they're not 100% reliable. There's a little bit of a push your luck. You're flipping over a random card to determine your speed. And that can be really influential when you're going around corners where you really, really care about your speed a lot. So that little push your luck married with hand management, much, much more so than Flamme Rouge, kind of felt like it made the game. It kind of felt like you said, you're setting yourself up for the crucial turns you need as you're going around corners or approaching long straights. And you have a fun resource to play with as well in the form of heat.
Speaking of setting yourself up and the whole heat mechanism, I liked how when you're going down that home stretch for the final lap, trying to get to the checkered flag, and, you know, there's no reason now not to max out your engine because, you know, once the game is over, who cares how clogged it is? And so, you know, you try to keep a little bit of that heat in reserve, and then at the end, you just max it out and push as hard as you can. So I like that feeling, that sort of crescendo.
Yes, I loved that too. And again, thematically, it makes so much sense.
I think that this is definitely better than Flamme Rouge, like definitely more exciting and engaging than Flamme Rouge. But in the version that we played, which was on the USA map with the basic starting decks, it felt very incremental, just like Flamme Rouge, which is that most turns everybody was around the same, and that proceeded to happen for 80 to 90% of the game. And then the players who won the game got the best cards coming around the last corner when we were all next to each other, or slipstreamed most appropriately on the second to last turn. Yeah, I would not play this again, or it would have to be with either a different map or with some of the stuff that changes your engine. I was doing my best to appear like I was in heat or having fun playing the game, but I was grinning and just smiling while everyone else was having a good time.
Maybe because you were not using your heat correctly and you kept spinning out.
I spun out one time in protest of
In protest?
In protest.
Okay.
Elon,
I think there was the time that was not in protest. There was one time that was
I only spun out once. No, what are you talking about? This is literal. I, on the last turn of the game, clearly, I played 4 cards when I had like 1 space to go, crossed the finish line, and then spun out and went all the way back. Don't take that away from me.
I think that there is some validity to what you're saying, but I think some of that was also maybe exacerbated by the 6-player game, which is also actually a problem that Flamme Rouge has. If you play that at the max player count, it's just miserable. I would say that mine and Mark's game at 4 felt substantially better.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I did have fun, but I do sort of agree. There were times where people would pull ahead in our game, but because of the corners, and again, we spoke to somebody who had played this and said that other maps alleviated, but you have a straightaway and you get a lead, or you make a good turn and you get a lead, but there were so many sort of turns and you have to be so cautious around the turns that it seemed like players would bunch up again around the corners. Now, it made it the case where that made everybody feel like they were having a chance to win, and so it's a design decision that I don't even necessarily disagree with. I just, for a competitive game, I generally like to have the opportunity for somebody to pull ahead if they're playing well or not, and that didn't really seem to be the case. It seemed like everybody was going to be sort of in and around the front of the line toward the end of the game. But if it turns out that there are maps that allow for separation versus maps that are for bunching up and for keeping people engaged and thinking they all have a chance to win, I'm happy that those choices potentially exist. And so the end of the BGB game nights led into Saturday, and Saturday was our last real day at the convention. We spent some time on Sunday, but for the most part, Saturday was our main convention day. This was highlighted by games of Super Vampires and Spooky Castle. I won't go into too much detail about that, but for those who are interested, I would encourage you to look those up. These are games sort of along the lines of, in fact, this could be like a trilogy with Magic Mountain. Magic Mountain, Super Vampires, Spooky Castle, all sort of a flavor. It was also highlighted by, while we were playing these quote-unquote children's games, Christina screaming at the top of her lungs and scaring everybody around us.
I think it was the most embarrassing moment of the weekend. I think the entire con got silent and looked at our table when this happened. Because I don't know, I just get really stressed and invested in these things, even the children's games. And Kellen was about to ruin everything. He was about to destroy it. And he rams his magnet into the wall. And so I was just trying to quickly deliver information to him, which came out in the form of a scream of stop. Like a shriek. It sounded like my life was in danger and somebody was attacking me. That is how I screamed stop. And as you can imagine, everybody looked our way, and some people even made some comments to us.
There were an expletive or two.
A few expletives.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, it was so embarrassing. But then we were laughing, crying.
Yeah, how do you think I felt? I had that dumbass mask on when everybody looked.
Everybody looked, and Callan didn't even know that everyone was looking because he had a ghost mask completely covering his face.
We also got the chance to play a team trick taker, Yokai Septet. Is that how it's pronounced? That's certainly how
that
it's
is. Yeah, and I think I'll probably cover this in detail on a future episode. It's probably my favorite game of the con, which is funny given that it was Neelan's least favorite game of the con. A 2v2 trick-taking game that I was turned on to by Monique and Naveen from Before You Play with holographic cards. But it has all the tension that you'd expect from a 2-player team versus team game, and all the ways to sort of work together with your teammate but also let them down, which makes it very stressful. It was very stressful. Whether you liked it or hated it, it was very stressful.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that one. And then the highlight of our time at the convention on Saturday was when we were visited by none other than the one and only Mr. Delicious, Mike Delicio, who came and I guess he was there as we were wrapping up a game of Quickety Pickety, which is one game.
Yeah, it was a mistake.
But such a fun name, Quickety Pickety.
It is, yes, fun name, not as fun a game as the name. But yeah, he introduced us to a game by the Doctor, Ninja Master.
Oh, by the way, he asked if he could include all that footage in his video review of the game on the Dice Tower. And I said, obviously, as long as I look good in it, and the I being me, Kellen.
Oh, of Ninja Master, where we're bleeding all over each other?
Uh-huh. Yes.
Yeah, and what Christina's saying is not like a euphemism or flowery language. There was actually bloodshed playing Ninja Master. Ninja Master is, again, a game by Reiner Knizia, and it's a game where you're throwing dice into sort of like a ring, and then you're grabbing pieces. You're grabbing these ninjas, or you're grabbing a sword. And so the ninjas are sort of around the central area, so you can grab them without doing too much damage. But the sword that you could potentially grab from another player, and the sword is sort of heightened because not only is it going to score you points, but you're also taking away points by the player who possesses the sword.
You're taking half
you're taking
of someone's
half their points. And so that heightened level of urgency that the sword sort of endowed led to literal bloodshed from two of the tanks on each other, I guess, where Nealon and Christina literally cut each other, I guess, playing that.
Yeah.
Any regrets to the
did Nealon win?
Cutting each other?
I think I did win.
Okay. So it was worth it for one of us.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Blood was worth it. I thought this was cute. Small, mini, super accessible dexterity speed game is a pretty gimmicky niche genre, but this is one of the best ones.
Yeah, I don't know how much legs it has. Like, I don't know if I'd want to play, but yeah, it'd be a fun game to introduce to people for the gimmick.
I'm very bad at these types of games, and I had either 0 or negative points the entire game, which is why I was more likely to attack for the sword, because I had nothing to lose.
Right.
It didn't matter if I grabbed it.
Well, you had part of your hand to lose.
I did have part of my hand to lose. Yeah, that's a very good point.
If Nealon had anything to say about it. And while Mr. Delisio was there, we got a chance to play his and Dan Hughes' I guess, prototype, I Made You a Mixtape. We tried to get Mike to pretend that this was a Knizia design because Christina had stepped away, and when he was describing it, she didn't hear that this was a game designed by Mike. But that facade, unfortunately, evaporated shortly thereafter.
Lasted
but yeah,
10 seconds.
Yeah, right.
It's a very short set collecting game where you're pressing your luck to try to make a mixtape that has balanced genres of music and sides. You know, it's going to go through different incarnations, I think, on its way to Kickstarter. But we did have must be a very premium tier of that Kickstarter because every card that was flipped had a song on it. And Mike Delisio would start singing it to us
that's right.
while we were deciding if we wanted to pick up that card. It's cute. It's small. It'll be interesting to see how they develop that. And I think it's really fun, right, to see other content creators making board games and sort of bringing ideas to life. So it was fun to get to check that out.
And do we want to reveal the Kickstarter stretch goal that Mike
promised us?
Promised that we would be able to have on his Kickstarter?
Yes.
There will be a Kickstarter stretch goal when I Made You a Mixtape comes out, which will be BGB Sings the Hits. So that'll be a stretch goal, and we'll be doing your favorite ballads. I'm sure it'll come out. I guess it'll come out in a tape, right? You wouldn't.
Yeah, it would have to be on a
You'd want to be
cassette.
thematic. Yeah,
exactly.
So reason to break out your old cassette players to hear us sing your favorite songs. And so that was a Saturday. We wound down the day by making a stop at a local sushi buffet. And while we were waiting for our table, we decided to hop over to the nearby casino just to walk around because we hadn't spent much time in a casino. And, you want to spend some time in a casino when you're in Vegas. And we're just walking around. We're not really, I guess we were looking for a blackjack table, weren't we? Or something like that. But yeah, didn't ever get a chance to play anything except, and I use that because good old One Pull Kellen decided that he would sit down to a slot machine. He went to a big money, $1 per line slot machine.
Big money, big money.
Big money, that's right. Put a bill in and hit it big. One pull. And
one pull.
You're betting $5 right now, Kellen. Like I pushed a button and you're like, that means $5 per pull. And I'm like, yeah, you're goddamn right. That's what we're betting.
One pull, $100.
That's right.
It's like they say I'm really good at reading a room, right? It was my emotional empathy that I knew which machine to sit down at. We got in, we got out.
Your emotional empathy allows you to read machines?
Don't question. There was a rising crescendo, right, of how that joke was going to end, and you interrupted it sort of.
Well, I was so distracted by your empathy for robots.
Yeah, I thought I was going to get away with it.
He did walk past the machine, spin around, and suddenly look back and be like, it's this one, and sat down.
But yeah, so sat down, pulled $100 out, and then walked away. And needless to say, all the pit bosses were eyeing
They were
Count
watching us
suspiciously.
for the rest of the night. They followed us to the sushi restaurant.
That's right, exactly. Fortunately for them, they didn't actually follow us in the sushi restaurant because we
got the sushi restaurant.
We
too.
got the sushi restaurant. Yeah, we created some big time havoc in the sushi restaurant. It's a tale too long to share on this podcast.
Just imagine how competitive specifically Mark and I are. And we were doing like all you can eat sushi. So just keep that in mind and you can probably imagine what happened.
I will just say that it featured upset waitresses, right? Definitely upset, yeah. And it also included a end of the night totaling of how much the sushi we got as a buffet would have cost a la carte.
Oh, I got that on video. I forgot about that.
Oh, there you go. So
Patreon exclusive.
I feel like it would be crass to recount the number here, but needless to say that is now the benchmark for next year. So when we go back to the buffet next year, we know the minimum now that we have to take them for.
I just want you to know, Mark, I could have eaten more sushi. I could have had more than our ceremonial round.
Oh my God. Yeah, I forgot ceremonial sake and ceremonial sushi. Those are two other wonderful stories. Yeah.
Stories for another time.
That's right. Exactly. We went into the casino and them there, and then went into the buffet and them there. A lot of going on. And that was our Saturday. And then Sunday.
We did play other games on Saturday. That's not all we did. But
no, we played Pictionary Air. We played Praise.
We played Clever
Masterword. Oh, Clever Cube, right. I didn't play that, but you guys did. And then Sunday was the final day. And before, again, the LA-based tanks had to take off, we got a chance to play two biggies, Stationfall and Time of Empires. Time of Empires, Neelan has talked about before. Neelan, you just sort of do a quick rundown of that?
Yeah, so Time of Empires, I've mentioned this before, as a real-time 4X type of game. It's trying to be a 4X game where you have a civilization, and you're moving around across a map, and you're getting tech and all that jazz, except it breaks down into like 3 9-minute real-time rounds of like sand time replacement.
I like this. I forget what your comment was, Neelan, about it. It's like, it's not necessarily like a fantastic real-time 4X, but it's probably as good as a real-time 4X game can get.
I mean, for what it's worth, I do really, really like it. I think it's quite good. But that statement is basically like as true as it gets, right? It's about as good as you could do a real-time 4X game, which means you have to understand like the upper limit of what that could be and be okay with that.
It's like, I've never played a game where Neelan putting the end of game victory conditions closest to him gave him a huge competitive advantage. But I swear to God, in the third round, I was like standing up and leaning and like knocking over stuff and could not get it was like multifaceted. It was a multifaceted problem. I could not get my hourglasses to stand up on the spots they were supposed to be on, and I could not stack my tile in the stack that it was supposed to be on.
I had the same problem, and they kept toppling over and then moved everything, and you're quickly trying to rearrange because it matters where things are. Oh God, it was stressful.
I think that it did lead to my observation throughout the whole convention is that board games have no sense or respect anymore for like just being playable on a table. It's not as important. It's like there's a lot of information that only reads one way. Not everyone will have easy access to this board. It's like it's a less relevant factor and the people will just figure it out. But we're here to complain and push back.
Well, it was exacerbated by the way that Neelan set up the board. He was like keeping things away from you. Like the Wonders board, he made sure it was on his side of the table, so that didn't help things.
I think I'm just not a real-time. I think real-time is just not for me.
Yeah, it was sort of a bummer because you're such a fan of 4X games.
Right. Well, and I think maybe that's more what it is because I love 4X games so much. I wanted to like maximize that part of it, but the real time part of it prevented me from being able to like fully get invested or even figure it out, which also I should say, I would love to play this again because I think the first time through, you're like trying to remember rules and like figure things out. You can't really ask questions because you don't want to distract other people from their time. So I reserve the right to change my opinion.
And finally, the last game we played was Stationfall. This is one of the hot games of the year, designed by Matt Eklund. Neelan, do you want to do a quick overview of this as well, since you were the teacher?
Yeah, I'll jump in with that as well. So this is now the fourth time that I have played Stationfall, but I was very excited to introduce it to the three of you. This is by Ion Design and Matt Eklund. Not the bad Eklund, it should be said. But the premise of Stationfall is that it's a competitive game where you have a station falling to Earth. There are, depending on the player count, in the four-player game, 12 characters that are on the station. And in most games, they're going to be randomized from a large deck of about 30 different characters. But we played with the basic setup, and these characters all have different objectives, different abilities. And you're going to get 2 of their cards, and you're going to pick one to be your primary objective and one just to have a sort of small bonus objective with. But crucially, while that information is kind of secret and sort of only yours to utilize, you can use any character in the game. There's a system of like influencing them where multiple players can control them. And you're going to send them around the station doing an assortment of different things. It's wild how big this board is and how many different rooms there are and how many possibilities there are. Everything you can do is fairly simple. It's just a lot of it. But it's sort of the things like you can turn off the cameras. You can turn off the power. You can damage escape pods. You can launch escape pods. You can open and unlock doors. You can release this insane like Project X, which is like a randomized card that has like a weird monster or threat that can start to take over the station.
Bludgeon each other.
You can bludgeon each other. You can rob each other.
You can't bludgeon your person if they have a helmet on.
You can't do that. That's true.
You can shoot them.
You can shoot them. You can throw grenades. You can set rooms on fire. It's just kind of nuts. Like
you can drag bodies.
You can drag bodies around. Yes, there are so many.
You can send people out into outer space. You can throw people out into outer space.
Very much so. Yeah, there are airlocks, hazards. It's just nuts the possibilities that the space presents as options, all in service of trying to like secretly fulfill your objectives while obscuring what exactly you're trying to do. How did you guys like Stationfall?
So you said going into it, that you had games that were mostly around the 45-minute mark, but then you had a game previously that was about an hour, was it?
No. So the shortest game I've had was 45, but the other two were at about 90, I would say.
90 minutes, yeah. And our game went about 2 hours. And to cut to the chase here, I really, really liked it. I think it is unlike any game I've played. Now, there are a lot of aspects in this game that you have in other games. There are other games where you can control multiple characters and sort of have your own as the true one and things like that, and hidden objectives and sort of shared incentives and divergent incentives. And obviously there are tons of space games. But I thought this was like super, super thematic for all the rules that there are. And the teach, I think, is about 45 minutes long. Everything makes sense. We did have to refer to things. We did have to ask Neelan how things worked, but the different rooms made sense. The airlock and the escape pods and the claw and the captain's quarters and all this stuff like sort of like made thematic sense. And we had like a spaceship and like just very different types of characters. Just made for a very fun thematic experience. Our game, I don't know if I already said this, but our game went 2 hours, and I think that'll be lessened with more plays because we didn't know what we were doing. But if that game had been closer to 90 minutes, an hour, something like that, I think it would have been a unassailable experience. It would have been just like, my best experience of the con, bar none. As it stands, it was right up there. It was one of my top, I think, for sure, 3 games that I played during the convention, just because how sort of wild it was.
Yeah, I agree. I think it was definitely in my top 3 as well. It was super unique as far as anything that I've played. And I think what made it both really fun and potentially very frustrating is that because you obviously don't know what other people want, a lot of times players will accidentally help each other or accidentally hurt each other. And so there was a lot of that happening in our game in a way that felt really good for the people it was helping, but it felt pretty damaging to the people it was hurting. It just introduces this element of luck. It just can feel kind of random. I think that was the thing that I had the biggest problem with, but I do think that it also allows for it to have really high highs as well. But yeah, I thought this was super fun. I think I definitely want to get more plays in. I agree with you, Mark. I think if it was shorter, I would like it a lot more. So if we could get it down to closer to an hour, that would be amazing. But I had so much fun playing this. Kellen?
Yeah, I think there's a lot that could be said about Stationfall. I think some of the closest contemporaries to me feel like John Company 2nd Edition, which I previously described as like Cosmic Encounter for like, either war gamers or people who like PAX games. And this is playing in somewhat of a similar space. I think that the potential for storytelling is quite dramatic. You know, our game ended with Neelan and Mark, or who we thought was Mark, the daredevil, and I can't even remember who Neelan was. The
stowaway.
The stowaway, both not having enough turns to get into the escape pods and launch it. So they were trying to figure out how to both escape together.
And Kellen and I kept going in because we were sitting next to each other. So we never, ever worked together. So that was the other thing that was weird about this, is because of our secret objectives, it incentivized us to help each other in that moment. And so that was really fun too, because we actually got to ally for once. But we just were kind of like 1-2 punching to make sure they couldn't escape, because it would be very, very bad for my game anyways if they escaped. But yeah, it was very funny from a narrative perspective.
Essentially, they got into an escape pod, and then Christina and I used our 2 turns to blow up or to damage the escape pod. And so then Neelan would take his turn to move into the other escape pod, hoping that Mark would be forced to take him, and we would proceed to destroy that escape pod. I think super cool. I'm glad I own it, which is the highest praise I can give it, for Neelan and I to co-own, or not co-own, but to both own a game is alarming or different. But I will say it will take a specific type of gamer, which is twofold. One who's willing to commit to the bit, commit to the storytelling, commit to trying desperately to win, but then also be very outcome independent, because what can happen, and what did happen, is that Neelan went from, potentially scoring 5 points and being in second place, going back and forth, 5 points, 0 points, 5 points, 0 points, and then ultimately ending the game with 0 points, doing the worst. Neelan, you were the 4th place best player in that game of Stationfall. So there's a little bit of squinting that you have to do there when you final tally the points, compared to my favorite games that do these things.
I think that, to your point earlier, Kellen, board games are not traditionally very good at storytelling, would kind of, I think, be both of our takes. But the stories that Stationfall presents, while they're all just like cliches of like sci-fi tropes, they're specific from game to game. Like in ours, it was, the hilarity of Mark and I trying to escape on escape pods while something is like creeping across the entire station, threatening to destroy it. And we're debating, do we turn the lights off to like save the station, or do we just let the station blow up? And like, those are fairly unique to our game of it. And those will happen from game to game to game. Like, one of my favorite games of this, I utilize a telepathic rat to make me bludgeon myself so that I could drag myself into an escape pod to escape a situation where I wouldn't have been able to otherwise. So those like ridiculous moments like feel very, very creative. And when you come up with them, when you come up with like the solutions to the game's ridiculous problems, those feel like incredible highs to me. But at the same time, you do have to be okay with the fact that this is ultimately a quite silly game, and especially a quite silly game that is incredibly heavy and incredibly hard to teach. And that's just such a weird niche, but it's one that I am like so here for. I've loved my games of this.
Yeah, and I think, like really, our game started, no one knew what was going on. All of a sudden, Mark opened Project X, which is like the door you're not supposed to open. He stole a helmet, jumped out of the front of the ship as the daredevil, flew around the ship, and then tried to escape before the whole ship went up in flames. So that's funny.
And then it turned out that I wasn't the daredevil at all.
I know.
That was the best reveal of the game.
Also, like the context or idea, and, saying this for no reason at all, ***. Playing this with 8 players would be absolutely atrocious. And I would never see how anyone would even consider doing that unless you were all super, super, super experienced, a la like a game like Cthulhu Wars, where you want to do it for the lulz.
Yeah, I do actually, I want to double down on that. If you are trying this for the first time, please do not take the box's advice and treat this as a up to 9 player game. That's madness. Play it at 4 or 5. That seems to be the right spot in my experience.
Yeah, my hope would be that 5 to me sound like just a little bit more diplomacy, but I haven't played it at 5, so that's my speculation. That would be what I'd want to try it at next.
That is Stationfall by Matt Eklund and Ion Design.
And that concluded our time at the convention as the blue, red, and orange tanks drove away. And that's going to conclude our show, but
I'm just picturing like all of us humans getting into tanks. Like I get in a blue tank and Kellen gets in a red tank and Neelan gets in an orange tank and we all drive away from your house.
That would have been cool. Yeah. If only. If only it were so. But let us know on the Discord. If you were fortunate enough to be at Dice Tower West, let us know what your favorite games were. That is at boardgamebarrage.com/Discord, where people have been sharing their own stories of Dice Tower West, where we've shared pictures both of our games at the convention and of the BGB game night. You can follow us on all forms of social media. You can email us at boardgamebarrage@gmail.com. Big thank you, as always, to Heart Society for our intro and outro song, What's on Your Mind, Kid? And until next week, goodbye.
Bye-bye.
You go, Kellen.
Why do I have to go first?
I just thought you would.
Bye.
Bye.
Sort of their style. They've taken that older game and given it some modern gaming, given it a modern game. I'm sorry?
Nothing.
Okay. Is that a joke I'm going to get in the edit? Given it a modern...
You got to cut this. We know that they listen to the podcast. And
No, we absolutely can't cut. What are you
that's great.
talking
Yeah,
about?
I don't think it was bad.
This is perfect.
I think that's
cut
funny.
the part where I said we got him.
Okay.
No.
Why,
What
I
did you
feel
say-
like
what
I
did
have
you
to
say-
whisper when I'm telling you to cut something. That's my clap, to cut the part where I said we got him.
Okay, and if
Got
I
it.
triple clap, don't cut it.
Okay. Okay. Just overrode your...
Okay, I'll tell you what. You can put in the where I'm saying don't blah 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 blah, don't do because I said we got him, and then Kellen's saying we should do it. You could put that in the outro as long as it's not clear what we're referencing.
Okay. I think I got you.
Got
I
it?
think I got you. Got it. Got it.
I did also just want to really quick, I'll probably talk about this later, but anyway, I did want to just shout out Daniel for introducing me to, I did want to shout out Daniel, a longtime sunshine in our Discord and on Instagram. Nope, that's not true. I did want to shout out Daniel, a longtime
Sorry. And take 7.
Okay. I did want to shout out Daniel, a longtime sunshine in our Discord or the game table on Instagram for introducing me to